What an incredible topic. Hearing the voice of God, or for many people, it might be they can't handle the word God. Maybe it's they want to hear the voice of the Spirit, of wisdom, of truth, of love, of justice. These are all the words that we've used, which for us relate to our Creator, God. And so, how do you hear the voice of our Creator, who is all of those things, wisdom, love, truth, who is the author of peace? And today, as I went to a service, it said he speaks to us with words of peace. So really, that's even just an indication already. The moment you hear his voice, there will be a sense of peace, even if there's correction. I remember one time being corrected. Or I say corrected, I was made aware of something that I needed to change. Can't even remember what it was now. But rather than, as I had most of my life, felt a bit defensive and frightened of being judged or condemned, I was just made aware, as I'd made time to be still so I could listen, of what I was doing. But get this, it was just what I said. It was like I was shown from a loving Father, for my own good. There was no judgment, no condemnation, no criticism. It was just an awareness. And in that awareness, it melted me down, and it also encouraged me to change my ways, because often, as we hear, our thoughts and our ways are not the ways of love, unconditional love, which for me is God. But so as I began this journey, I had no idea how to hear the voice of God, wisdom, truth, love. No idea whatsoever. So it's been a very long journey of over 45 years or more. And over those years, I have learned, as we all learn, and I love learning. So I learned because I began to realize the fruits, the benefits of what I was listening to. I think I was expecting to be corrected all the time, judged, or being told off. A lot of what I had experienced in my life earlier. So it wasn't like that at all. I got to realize that it leads to a path of life, joy, peace, and eventually healthy relationships. It's just transformed me, and continuing to do so as I listen, and also to my whole family. But the word, I just want you to hear this, the word listening is the word that really is the important one. And you can't really listen unless you stop. I find, particularly even just lately, I've found that I wake up in the morning and I become aware of where I'm at, and my head is full of thoughts, full of words, and it's just like a jumble. And I acknowledge it and I'm aware of it, and it takes a little while, but I just stand there and I say, well, I invite you in, wisdom and truth. Just come and just breathe in and take over my thoughts and before I even get out of bed, because otherwise my mind and my thoughts lead the way I'm going to be in the day. It's not a good way to live, jumbled and all over the place, and they lost their way. We lose our way in our thinking, as it said, is in the Word of God. So it brings life, joy, peace, contentment. There's a great contentment I feel a lot of the time now, after all these years. Not all the time. As I said, I woke up this morning, but as I waited and invited, all of that jumble stopped and a peace came. As he says, I speak words of peace, or I am the author of peace. And I remember with early on in my walk, I often ended up I think I went through 2 burnouts, because I was trying so hard to get it right and to do it right and to, I don't know, make myself right, maybe in the end, because maybe deep down I realized later on that I felt wrong about myself. So I was always paddling very, very hard. So I was in my roles. So if I found another thing that I had to let go of or become aware of, was that I was in my roles, and I had to really acknowledge when I was in control. You know what that's like, because you'll feel tension in your body. If you're in control, you will feel, there'll be a hardness, as Fiona said, there'll be a hardness about your voice, about everything. That's what control's like. Or you'll be responsible and you'll be heavy and burdened, as I used to be all the time, and trying to make it right. But as I would come back explaining, and this is what I call hearing the voice of God, is meant to lead to a relationship, not religion. Religion's meant to take us to a relationship, taking back to God and telling him how I feel, where I'm at, and waiting to listen to what he says. Now, it used to take me about 5 minutes to start with, and I felt like I chained myself down. It went on to 20 minutes, and a half an hour, then an hour, then 2 hours, because I was determined to wait in the presence of God, hoping that he would speak to me, he would touch me. Sometimes we can't figure it out. Sometimes we can't acknowledge our feelings and our beliefs and then hear him. But just waiting, he sees our intentions, as I did this morning, and his peace will come. And then the wonderful thing, as you have been touched by his presence or his words, or maybe an image that he will give you, you will gain clarity. You'll see things, people, situations totally differently. I remember, if I hadn't have heard the voice of God, and I know this was the voice of God without doubt, because there's a fruit of it. Years ago, a relationship that I had that was very important to me would have ended. Because I remember I was going through a real struggle with this particular relationship. And it was so bad, I thought I'd rather just end the relationship and move on, because there was too much pain. I felt so alone in the relationship. I felt like it was one way. I don't know whether you ever relate to that or not. Anyway, so I was focused on that person really giving me something that I obviously had missed, but I didn't realize. So I remember standing on the sand at this beach, and I remember calling out from my heart and saying, well, I feel so alone and the pain is so bad, I'd rather be on my own than in a relationship with this person where it's sort of in my face that I feel so alone. But what do you want me to do? That was the question I asked. I heard as clear as anyone walking into this room now and speaking to me, as clear as day, and it was very firm, it was very strong, and I got one word, and that was the word, and it certainly wasn't from me. It didn't sound like my voice. It wasn't what I wanted to hear. And I heard the word stay, just like you say to a dog firmly, stay. But I didn't really, you say it to a dog because you love the dog, because maybe they're going to be run over. Well, I was told to stay. And it wasn't until on reflection that I saw the fruit of that word, and I just knew I was to listen and do it, obey. So I did it. But 2 weeks later, I had the most wonderful breakthrough with wonderful Dorothy, who helped me go back to that alone space and really listen to myself and go back to that memory where I had felt that deep aloneness and darkness, and I stayed with it. I didn't run from it. Normally I run from that sort of thing. And I experienced a light and a presence, and the aloneness completely disappeared. Did I hear any words? No. But for me, it was as good as, or even better than words, because I experienced the presence of God, because all the negative feelings and beliefs in that memory dissolved. I have never, ever, ever, ever felt alone since. Now, alone was one of my big Achilles heels. And I know that a lot of people feel alone in this world. I hear all the love songs because we're wanting our beloved or our boyfriend, our girlfriend, whoever. to fill the space of the emptiness or aloneness within us. And now I realize that's unrealistic expectations. They can't. They can be a companion. They can be there for fun together. They can be there as a, I don't know, somebody to lean on to a certain degree. But it's unrealistic for us to expect someone else to fill us up. And now I realize the moment I got filled up with that sense of presence, I no longer needed that relationship to fill me up. Did I leave it? No, I stayed because I got the word stay very firmly. And then I was blessed abundantly in that relationship. It just grew and grew and grew. But I felt free, and I knew that that other person, it doesn't matter who or what it was about, that other person felt a sense of freedom, and we became closer as friends. And I could accept them where they were at, and I would no longer want. When you want something from someone or something, it means that you believe that you are empty, that you haven't already got it, whereas in fact that's a lie. The truth is, if you sit and listen to the voice of wisdom and truth, you'll discover the very thing you wanted from that thing, that person, something being resolved, is already within you, because it'll make you feel peaceful, content, fulfilled. It'll make you feel secure, safe. These are the words that we've heard from hundreds of people over the years. Even though they were in an opposite situation, they often felt a sense of disorder in their life, disappointed, despair, disillusionment, destruction, exhausted. Exhaustion, you know, is always when you're taking over. I had to learn that the hard way. So what prevents us from hearing? Well, just the things I mentioned. And I think, you know, one of the things that pulled me up was not being able to hear the voice of God and wisdom and truth. Was I was too much, as I said, in my roles, and I just constantly got tired. And then I'd end up complaining. Anyone here complain? No, you wouldn't complain, would you? And in the Word of God, it said, remember in the desert, they had to go in the desert for 40 years. Someone said to me it should have been 40 days. Well, if you complain, you get stuck, and you go around in a record, and you get stuck with the same old complaint about yourself, your life, your whatever it is, and the groove goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and you get in the habit of complaining. And that's made the Israelites, it just stopped them in the desert. They just couldn't move on. So please give up complaining and instead take on sharing your heart and your thoughts and beliefs with the thing that you're complaining about. And then encounter the one who wants to give you an abundance. I know, because I got it after I sat still and listened. Blaming. You wouldn't blame anyone, would you? Would you blame anyone? Would you blame yourself? Judging, blaming is a massive block. I remember when I started this journey to try and listen and hear the voice of God, the first image I got was a brick wall. And now I realize all those bricks related to complaining, blaming, judging, lies, deception, all had to slowly come down for me to be able to see beyond the wall and see that what I always wanted was to be loved. It's already there within me. I was looking out there for it. I was waiting for me to feel something because of someone or something that I do, and it didn't work. But sometimes I see people using their creator or God as a genie. If I say X amount of prayers, if I do so many this and so many that, then I've been promised in faith that I will get that. But aren't we using him like a genie? Like just rub me? Aren't we just rubbing him and saying what I want? Have we actually stopped and said, this is what I want, which is you need to do. You need to come and share what you want. And you feel, and your heart, because it's all about love in the end, your heart and your feelings and your thoughts. But if you ever stop long enough to listen and saying, well, wisdom, creator God, divine counselor, what do you want? to say in these circumstances? How would you have me see this? Do you ever do that? I had to learn to do that over and over and over again. Over and over and over again. So when you go in, how should I pray? What should I pray for? You then listen and you get out of the way. You see, one of the biggest blocks for me was myself. I was in the way. I wasn't listening to say, this is what I want. And I'm repeating it because it's so powerful. But what do you want me to? What do you want me to pray for? What do you want? And where are you in this situation? And then listen to the response. Are we waiting long enough to hear the voice of God? So how do you hear him? How do you know it's God? Well, you've already heard me say it. You know it by the fruit. You know it like in that relationship I just spoke about, like with my daughter, who was dying. I'm not going to go to the story. I've shared it so many times. And I'd done all I knew how to do, and I finally knelt down and surrendered her, even if she died, to God, because I thought, I can't do any more, and neither can she. And there was a turning point of utter peace coming on me. And I heard these words, stop talking about it. I was talking about, it was clear as day. I was talking about the problem instead of the possibilities. I was talking about the problem instead of just surrendering it and then changing my focus. And I was quite clearly, and from that day on, it was like, again, not as firm as the other one, but a gentle instruction to stop talking about the problem, but to look at him and ask for his perspective on it. How would he have me see it? Otherwise, I realised in reflections, our words create, and we continue to create what we're thinking, what we're complaining about the problem. And we're focused on the problem rather than the one who has possibilities, who is within us, who just wants us to listen to his voice. From that day on, everything turned around with my daughter. Unbelievably, as you know. And she's now a mother and children, became a personal trainer, and she was literally on death's doorstep because I learned to listen to the voice of God and I applied what I heard. I needed to stop complaining, blaming, being a victim. I needed to stop talking about that problem, that situation to everybody. It was possessing me. From that day on, I saw her dancing. I was given an image. That's another way he talks to you, through images, a sense and words. And through the word of God, as Andrew said earlier on, of course. Always check it with the word of God. But I knew it was him because of the fruits. I looked at the fruits. Look at the fruit. Test it. I remember a priest went to the Pope one day and said, I believe God wants me to go and do this. And it was a dramatic change from what he was doing in the Vatican. And the Pope very wisely said to him, well, come back in a year's time. And if you still sense that and it's still from God and you thank him and you still want to do it, you're released. So you need to wait and test the voice of God as well. If it's still there and it brings you peace, it may disturb me a bit when I had to stay, but I knew I had to be obedient in that day. And I hate using these words, but it's true. If I hadn't learned, and I continue to learn, to practice the presence, washing up the dishes, practice talking to him, practice being aware of his presence, practice living for and loving him first, doing every little thing as a twosome, as the we, never alone, practicing the presence of God in the moment, in every relationship. When I went around to a family member's function, I actually was feeling quite frightened, but I recognized that fear. And I didn't like, and I felt uncomfortable in the presence of her friends. So when I went around, I asked, and of course you've got to ask, but you've got to listen as well. Could he send his heavenly angels to surround me and let me talk to who I need to talk to? This is what you can do with people you don't like. This is listening, asking, and then the way I listened to the voice of God was this. My family member came up to me afterwards and said, everyone couldn't believe how calm you were and how lovely you were and how close you and your husband were. And my sister is not into giving compliments. She wasn't into giving compliments then. This is the opposite. And I felt the other thing I knew by the presence of God, again, not words, but a sense of presence. I felt surrounded in this safe space. And everybody kept coming to me and I just listened to them. The experience was an absolute opposite of what I would normally experience because I asked and I listened and I was conscious and aware of the presence of the angels being with me. That's another way, looking for the fruit, a sense, an image, words, nature, as was said earlier on. So I think I've probably given you enough. Now I'm just going to leave this with you. Look, you can end up frustrated, trapped, frightened, angry, exhausted, insecure. There's some of the main ones that people have these days. That's mental illness when you feel like that, because when you react out of that, you only compound it and you end up complaining and blaming. Your choice. What I do with it is I acknowledge it. I go straight back and tell him, I'm frustrated. I could dong them on the head. What else? I need to empty its acknowledgement, and then I listen. Give me your perspective, but I can't hear if I'm clogged up with all that rubbish. And then I go on to it, then I can hear or sense an image or whatever brings peace is his presence. And I feel accepting, compassionate. I feel, refreshed. And I'm okay. I just sort of have a compassion for the person instead of wanting to dong them on the head, So I've said enough about this subject now, but please, please discern. I really dislike, and this is after years of experience of various groups and being with people. When we first begin our walk, people used to say, in my circumstances anyway, oh, God said to me, oh, do not, please. I recommend you do not say that. Because if you ever say that to people, I know of people's lives who've been ruined because they take that literally. It's always for everyone to discern where the words come from, where the images, whether whatever people give us. Go aside, discern it. Is it bringing you peace? Is it bringing you fruit in your life? Will it make a difference to every relationship for the better? Please discern and never say those words. This is what I think God's saying to me. Well, I don't even say that now. I just say, look, this is what's coming to me. I ask that you discern those words because it could be me. It could be another voice. And the other voice's darkness will always drag you down. You know whose voice that is? It's from darkness, deception, the liar, the deceiver, the evil one. The other voice, in a sense, will lift you up rather than dragging you down. Do not listen to this voice. Take it straight back captive and listen to the voice of God. Thank you for listening. Now, I've given you a lot. Just before I finish, I'm going to ask one thing that stands out to you that you can relate to in your life and you can put into action that will make a difference to clearing that pathway so you can hear the voice of wisdom and God. What is it you're being asked to do? Just listen for a moment. Don't think, just listen to the very first thing that comes back to your mind. Christina said to everyone, For her, she's to sit and rest. I cannot tell you how that turned my life around. So just stay with that word, that sense, that image. And if you put it into action, look for the fruit. You know that God has been speaking to you today because that word has been coming to you. Just as you'll get a word to ring somebody out of the blue, you know when you ring that person, it makes a difference. It lifts them up. You know who's been speaking to you. Thank you for this. And see the difference it makes when you listen. Thank you.